I don't know. I don't know what to do with you, man. I like New York changed you. This isn't the guy I knew in Rome.
This is, well, yes, but we're still here and we're still grateful for conversation. So happy to be here. Thank you. Thank you.
That is beautiful. So you've been ordained a deacon since November 9th, and I'm a bad friend because I wasn't there for your diaconate ordination.
You
But
were
I
not,
still
but
remember the day, so that's something.
yes, you do. Yes, you do. No, yes, it has been almost 2 months since my diaconate ordination. I've been in seminary formation for this is year seven. Praise God,
Yeah.
and that includes 3 years in Rome, which I shared 2 of those happy years with you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know. It was so good, like because Rome is characterized so much by like, oh, you're like separated, and it was such like a struggle to find people. But it took some time, but hey, we found good people, I would say.
yeah,
It
yeah.
was it was an edifying experience. But like, so you're no longer in Rome. You're finishing your seminary's journey stateside. But like, what
Yes.
has I guess I guess in 3 days it'll be 2 months. So what has, your diaconate ministry been like so far? Is it much different than being a T3 or being an acolyte or a seminarian, or is it just kind of a continuation on to like a further goal?
In some ways, it does build up on that because you start off as a lector, which means you get treated mass, and then you become an acolyte. You get to set up the altar, and now I still do both of those things, but in a different way, in a more fulfilling way, I guess, because I get to proclaim the gospel and even give a homily about it, and then I
What's
also
your what's your famous thing about homilies?
oh yes, this is not me, or this I think it's St. Francis of Assisi, but neither he would claim that he said this. But
Just
preach the
say it.
gospel at all times, and if necessary, use words.
Amen.
Necessary.
Amen. I'm still waiting for the wordless homily, but I don't
We
know. It
got
might
there
it
yet.
might yeah, it might stir too much. I mean, you still just are a deacon. I mean, is it I mean, you're gearing up for this for, over half a decade. Is it, and people that are kind of above you in the
Right.
system that, you see them get ordained deacons.
Right.
Is it what you expected for the most part?
Um, in some ways it is. In some ways it isn't. I think one of the unexpected graces of having classmates ahead of you,
Hmm.
who were already ahead of you, it's just seeing like wow, that they've made it this far, and it's there's something beautiful about that. Like you're seeing what you're stepping into, and it's a
Yeah.
grace to have that preview, and in some ways, the hope that you'll one day share that. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, I don't know. In my estimation, being in the seminary for 6 years, it's like I've seen a lot of guys get ordained deacons, and like I think especially in the seminary system, I don't think I don't know. People kind of like downplay or they don't want to make a big deal about it because it's like everyone's on that path. And so like, I interacted with, deacons all the time and it's not like they're like, above me or something like that all of a sudden that they're deacons. So it's like kind of for me, again, I can't speak for it because like I was never ordained a deacon, but it seems to me like, yeah, when you're kind of involved in that world for long enough, you can kind of expect, what is to come. I mean, do you feel fulfilled already in your diaconal ministry, or does it really just feel like a stepping stone towards like the real goal, which is priesthood?
Sure. Actually, this was a question that came up the night of
Hmm.
ordination. We had some discerners here, high school discerners, high school age discerners, and they came to stay over the weekend for ordination weekend. And we just kind of stopped in. One of my classmates and I stopped in to say hello as they were
Hmm.
gathered with the vocations director. And the vocations director asked me, some people think of this as kind of like that, just like a transitory, transitional thing. It's not the
Yeah.
real thing. How do you
Hmm.
feel about that? Um, and I think my response, and it holds true now, is that the church, in her mercy, has legitimately given me this opportunities to preach the gospel or expose Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament in my state of life right now. And
Mm.
you know, this is what I get to do for the next 5 months.
Yeah.
and this is all that's expected of me, like I can enjoy it. I can enjoy it,
Yeah,
and
I
it's
mean that's a great point. Like it is about the right now. It's not about what this is preparing you to do. Like to think
right.
about it is like, practice. Like I don't think that that's right because then now you're rank ordering things. You're saying like deacons are diet priests and, like priests are like diet bishops or something like that, where it's just like the
Right.
diet kind of like Walmart version of it.
Like the lighter store brand.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, yeah, I won't even go there, but yeah, like there's something beautiful about like, obviously like everything good in life like has directionality and is like pointing towards something, mainly God in a lot of cases, but there's also something quite beautiful about just realizing what your ministry allows you to do in the present. And so like
Right.
I really enjoy that because I mean you're getting actually a pretty, I would say a pretty unique experience of diaconate or transitional diaconate compared to the average seminarian in that you're not really you're kind of done academically. You already have your ecclesial degree from the Vatican, and so you get, I think, a lot more of like, yeah, maybe relax is a little bit too unfair to you. You're still hunkering down, but you get more space, I think, to sit with the diaconate versus like, oh, you ordained a deacon, and by the way, class starts Monday, and now you're an academic until you fly home, whether it be from Rome or if you're
Sure.
stateside, and then you're a priest. And so it's like, because there are all of these stages where it's like, for those who don't know, like in the seminary, it's not like you're spending 6 years practicing mass. I was in the
Nope.
seminary for 6 years. I never said a practice mass. There's steps to it, and you get to a point where they call them practicums, and you are
Mhm.
practicing mass, but it's like in this workshop so that no one would think that you're actually impersonating a priest because that
Right.
wouldn't be good. But like it's not like, ooh, like diaconate is just like practicing, but now it's like you can actually do it in a church. Like I think that that's really beautiful that you've isolated it from like just being part of the path and enjoying it. I mean, this might be a bit of a loaded question. Like obviously, your priesthood has a date on it, so to speak. Would you enjoy being a deacon for longer? I mean, it's kind of open ended, but
Well, that's a good question. I mean, of course, it always depends on my cardinal archbishop when he's ordaining me a priest.
right.
But for the time for where I am right now, I think it's really been a grace moment to just spend these months being able to do this because I know that please God after priestly ordination, that's gonna be a whole set of different responsibilities, and I
Hmm.
wouldn't be as available as I am right now. Um, if I can share a little bit, for example, there is the Spanish music group who I follow. You may have heard me talk about Hakuna.
Yes. Hakuna. No, no Matata, just
No,
Hakuna.
but it is actually based on Hakuna Matata.
Okay, okay.
We,
Yeah.
one of their ministries is hosting holy hours in the
Hmm.
city in Old St. Patrick's Cathedral, and a friend of mine who's also a seminarian came down there and asked, "No, seriously, it can't be Hakuna from Hakuna Matata, right?" But we asked organizers, and they said, "Yep, yes, it is." But their whole kind of charism is to welcome everybody, to make sure that everybody has space
Yep.
for the Eucharistic Lord.
Hmm.
And so part of what I was able to do is just to help out during the holy hours, expose Jesus as the priest hears confessions.
Hmm.
Because I'm exercising my ministry of exposing Jesus and giving benediction, the priest can then do his ministry in the sacrament of confession. So
Yeah.
I think that's what the diaconate is. It's being a cooperator of the bishop and then of the priest. So it's help. Even now, we have that opportunity to help out so that the other ministries, the other offices or orders can do their thing. It's
Right.
cooperate. Yeah, it's been
Yeah, yeah, it's like you're hitting on like the real like biblical basis of like
mhm,
deacon as like a role of service, and all of like the orders are,
right.
service, but it's like the deacons like are really highlighted in like being like hands-on, like assisting at the altar.
Mhm.
And so there's something really pure about that. And yeah, I always enjoy hearing you talk about music because it's like correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think it's unfair to say you wouldn't call yourself a musician. I mean, I don't know. Is there a hidden
No,
talent there? Okay, yeah, I didn't think so, but I didn't want to assume. But it's like for me, like as a musician, like I would say like a primary enjoyment of like music for me is kind of participating in it. And like I enjoy listening to a lot of music too, but like I there's definitely points where I envy like, you where it's just like it actually like kind of grounds you in your personality. I mean like and kind of connecting it to like the service of the deacon. It's just like you're an incredibly hospitable dude, and like I have a mom who's she's in the hospitality industry, like working at hotels, as a concierge, and so it's just like, when you invite me to like dinner in the fifth floor kitchen at the Knack, and I get there and there's like a chocolate bar from Bled, Slovenia there, and he's like, oh, like I got this for you. It's just like it blows me away because it makes me feel very like visible and seen.
right.
And I think a lot of that, like, you're a pretty wholesome dude, I don't think you would be afraid to say that, but like kind of in the music that you listen to, it's a very like uplifting experience. And it's like, it's obviously like a meaningful thing for you, all of the different phases of, Kiwi Hour or PB&J Hour. I
Exactly.
know that's not what it was called, but oh gosh, we don't have to go on to that. But like,
Yeah.
I mean, have you always had that relationship with music? Is that like, because I'm kind of curious. I mean, I just know like we've sent songs back and forth, but like, was that kind of something you found in seminary or beforehand?
Sure, sure. Yeah, that's a great question. Music lately, especially, has really become kind of part of my prayer.
Hmm.
Music helps me pray, and it really speaks to like the kind of music I've found that I'm listening to at the moment is revealing of where my heart is.
Wow. Wow.
If because I'm not the type. The way I listen to music is that I put a playlist on and maybe something
Hmm.
sticks out.
Yeah.
But it's the song that sticks out that kind of tells me where I am
Hmm.
or how I'm preparing, going about my day. If sometimes it's a happy, uplifting J.J. Heller or Hakuna,
We
but
love JJ Heller.
sometimes it's also the melancholic music that I enjoy, and it's just okay. This is where my heart is right now,
Yeah.
and I think that just helps me figure out where I am, where my heart is.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. Like there's I think like maybe if we were to say it one way, like, oh well like, I choose the songs that I like and I put them on my playlist. But I like how
Mhm.
you're kind of highlighting that it's like it's almost the other way around where it's like we're kind of like the passive like observers of the music, and then
Mhm.
whatever like it calls whatever is kind of called out from it is like what actually sticks out and like what you end up needing to hear in that moment. And so like I actually like, even though this kind of sounds crazy to call a bad
Mhm.
habit, I will actually say that this is a bad habit. I used to listen to songs on repeat like 500 times, where
Sure.
like I would just like I'd really like a song and then I would listen to it over and over and over again for like 2 weeks, and then I would just like not enjoy it anymore. Like I kind of,
Yes.
used up all of the uses of it. But like I think, yeah, especially actually being in the barber shop, cutting your hair and
Yeah.
your
The boss.
God's way that, made you have a bigger brain in this area, and so we have to cut that shorter,
It's really a flat brain, but
yeah, it's just kind of compressed down.
yeah.
But especially in the barber shop, I started to transition away from just repeating songs because I'm like
Mhm.
all the seminarians and priests that would go in there would think I was like a psychopath if I was just listening to something for 40 minutes. But I was like listening to albums and things like that. But yeah,
Right.
I agree. Like there's definitely like songs that call out to me, and it's just like it's interesting. Like I'm kind of curious to hear your take on it. For me, like I don't. It's kind of like I have an ape brain where like I don't really listen to the lyrics, but if something catches my ear musically, then
Right.
oftentimes when I look at the lyrics and actually read them, then I'm like,
Mhm.
ooh, like that's actually really speaking to my heart at this moment. But I mean, are you more of like, you're kind of always tapping into the lyrics when you're kind of,
Right.
looking for these songs that are calling out to you?
Actually, that's kind of where I am. I just put a playlist on and
Uh-huh.
don't really pay attention too much to the lyrics unless something sticks out. You know,
Nice. Hey, we're
if
similar. Let's go.
yeah, who would have thought? Just a particular line that I repeat throughout the day and even bring to prayer. It's just, yeah, that's how I am.
I like it. Yeah. No, that's cool. And it's like I'm really I'm kind of as I'm, not getting old, but a wise man named Aaron once told me that once you turn 25, it's all downhill. So now that I'm
Yeah.
26, holy cow. But like, to think, as but what I was saying is like kind of as time goes on, I'm kind of get more and more like actually like strongly opposed to the idea of like,
Mm.
oh, like, you like this is something I do and then I go to prayer, or like, this is my enjoyment, whether it be like music or sports or even like YouTube or something like that. And
Right.
then being like, oh, but then like I gotta like put that away so that I can go pray. But instead, like the integration of that, like you talk about like bringing the music to prayer, and it's not like, oh, I'm praying to God despite this song being in my head. It's like I'm praying to God through
Yeah.
this song. Like I'm just, I strongly, strongly believe in the impossibility of like St. Paul saying pray without ceasing. Like
Mhm.
that just actually seems impossible because how can you even talk about something like, evening prayer in the breviary or like times of prayer? Because that implies that there's times that like you're not praying. But like I really do believe that it's like everything is imbued with the presence of God,
Absolutely.
obviously. Like
Absolutely.
God is not contained by our constructs. And so to think that like you're listening to music and like God is kind of just like plugging his ears until you're done, and then he's like
Right.
waiting for you to talk to him. It's just like I understand that. I think that there is a beauty in like like reserving space for God, but I actually think a more accurate standpoint is like God is everywhere. Like you can't escape him, and hopefully that's not like a scary reality, but that's like a comforting reality, you
Right.
know?
Yeah, just listening to you talk about like having that sections of okay, this is prayer time and this is music time.
Hmm.
I really don't think we can put a hard distinction between those two because whatever we're consuming will be brought into prayer whether we like it or not. And I
Yeah.
think this is where we have to be very judicious about what we listen to, what we consume on social media, because if you try to enter into prayer with whatever you have, that's going to come in. That's going to come into your prayer, whether it's a good music or bad music. It's
Yeah.
going to come into prayer, and so there is a necessary discernment about what material we're consuming, because if every moment is prayer, as you're saying, then that means that what I should be doing at every moment should be at least directed, or at least having a consciousness of the presence of God.
Yeah, I
Otherwise,
like the consciousness of it. I was talking to one of my friends with high school and we were kind of talking about like how to categorize or think about or conceptualize, a relationship with God. And he had mentioned like it's kind of like God is always trying to like make eye contact with you.
mhm,
Where it's just like you imagine you're in a big room at a
mhm,
party and he's trying to almost like take your gaze, where it's like you can be anywhere in that room, you can be doing anything you want, but it's just like to catch eye contact with someone, it's just like that's a really beloved reality to be like, oh wow, like I'm being sought after right now. And it's not being watched, it's just making eye contact. And a lot of times it's just like, eye contact is enough. Like yeah, like
right,
sometimes there's not really any words to be spoken.
absolutely.
So
The
so like
loving
speak
the Father.
yeah, yeah. So like speaking of, us going through life and progressing in years, but still staying young and limber and going to the gym, as best we can.
Exactly,
So
exactly.
like so you and I are both now, I would say, yeah, pretty much like a year and a half removed from living in Rome. And like I've really learned that um I need a lot of time actually to kind of make sense of, the past and things like that. But I think that this is like a good point to think about like, okay, like how do you think about Rome, like do you still find yourself like getting nostalgic about it or missing it, or are you just kind of like gung ho. Like, my friend who like I don't know what possessed him to do this. He sent me this podcast and it was these two like really intense like masculine guys, and like this guy was
Mhm.
giving this analogy. He's like, yeah, like on my car, like I ripped off the rear view mirror because like I'm not looking back. It's like
Right.
the only direction I'm going is forward. Like go 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 go. And I was like, holy cow, that is not my experience. But what is your experience of Rome? I guess a year and a half removed.
Sure, sure. Well, I think it being away from Rome, one of the best parts of Rome was just a fraternity that we had over
Yeah.
there. Just because you're there in a foreign country, and what do you do on the weekend? You're not going home on the weekend.
Yeah.
So I did really enjoy the times that we could just, yeah, have a meal on the fifth floor kitchen, or even just do a run in the city for a little errand. Um,
Yeah.
it's more of the fraternity that if anything I've missed. But I think God has also been so good that, yeah, I like the phrase that a wise man named Dr. Klafke
Ha.
once gave
Yes.
me. He said, "You can be apart, but not without. You can be apart, but not without." And I
That
really
seems, yeah, that seems that would resonate with you. I like that.
absolutely, because I mean, come on, we're a year away from Rome. I haven't seen you in months, but here we are, you know, chatting away on a little podcast
I
because those
know,
things,
it's good.
and relationships, conversations, they transform, they shift, they change, but they don't have to be lost. And
Hmm.
of course, it requires a conscious effort on our part, but
Right.
that's kind of how I view Rome. It's not, I'm not there. My relationships have changed in the sense that I can't just have a kiwi, kiwi mill on it.
I bought kiwis at Meijer today. I literally bought four
Hey,
kiwis and I was like, this is a bad idea because they're probably out of season and they're going to be really sour, but do it for my kiwi bros, you know. God knew what he was doing when he put those kiwis in my cart.
exactly, but you see, I can't have kiwis in the same way. I don't know. Just for context, I guess, can I give context?
Yes, please do.
Kiwi was part of my a kiwi. Having a kiwi was part of my tradition called fraternity fruit.
I've never heard that. Fraternity fruit. What?
Oh yeah, I
That's
call
how
it
it
my fraternity
started?
fruit. I would just walk up to our dear friend's room and told myself mentally that, all right, I'm gonna hang out here for the time it takes me to consume the kiwi.
It's so
And
good. I mean, I knew that it was like just fruit, but I didn't know, I never heard the alliteration of
yeah,
fraternity
yeah,
fruit,
it was
but that's
fraternity
very
fruit
on brand for you.
because I thought, if the conversation goes south, I finish my fruit and I throw it out.
Or you roll an uneaten kiwi under Ryan's couch and then it just
Well,
sits there for months.
but I had an out. Okay, I had an out. But otherwise, if it
Yep.
was a good
Yeah.
conversation, I could stay. I could stay for a
Right.
little longer. So yeah.
And then it grew into a whole thing where, oh, there's three kiwis in this room sitting on coasters. Why? Oh, because they're not ripe yet and they need to ripen. And
All right.
now it's just, they're all over the place and there's
That's right.
kiwis all over the place. And it's just like the most kind of kind of crestfallen, like somber picture I saw a few months after being in Rome
Uh-huh.
was, another podcast of the guest father, Joe Bro, sent me a
Yes.
picture of just like on his phone and like foreground was just Kiwi and then the background is Ryan,
Yes.
sitting with his legs crossed. And we're just like missing you at Kiwi hour right now. And it's just like, right to the heart.
Right.
But there is something good about that. And for all of like the lighthearted jovialness there, I think
Yeah.
there is a real reality of what I share there with you of it was the people and like that's what I cherish the most. And that's why when we went to Providence and I was interacting with all these guys and I wasn't really sure because like I was outside of the seminary system. All these guys are like priests and deacons, etc. And it's just like there wasn't even like a question if I was like still in the fold. It was like abundantly obvious just walking the coast with like, John Lotto and Maloney. And it's just like, oh, like I'm interacting with these like three, oh, hey, there it is.
I have his on my desk. I have his on my
Yeah,
desk.
the non-cleric in the blue there. It's beautiful. Thanks for the visual aid for all of the visual learners out there. But
No,
like
it's beautiful. I mean,
it
it's
is,
to
yeah.
be able to share life transcends really the location,
Hmm.
and that's the beauty of it. Because we're meant for relationship, and the fact that you belong. You're a part of this circle because we've shared life.
Right, right. Yeah, no, absolutely. And like, but like with that, I think there's a bit of a nuance where like you and I, like being in our shoes, it's like, yeah, that's actually like pretty clear for us. I don't think either of us would be surprised by saying fraternity was the strongest suit. But I just still think that there's like maybe an expectation from people that like wouldn't weren't there to think like, oh, but like why wouldn't you talk about like living in the eternal city or like being
Right.
able to travel and things like that. And it's like I don't know, there's a weird nuance there that I kind of want to go into because it's like
Mhm.
it's obvious that like we don't it's not that we don't appreciate those things, but like because we were there as like living there, like
Mhm.
not just study abroad, not just vacationing, but we were there. It's just like it kind of just becomes embedded into your surroundings. But like I don't want that to sound like we were like
Mhm.
constantly taking it for granted, but it was just like as beautiful as like a city or like a church like
Mhm.
building is, like in all of the beauty of the artwork there, like there's still something much more vibrant and communal about like encountering the other person, and like that's where Jesus is present, is experienced like through the face of other people, through the experience of the other. But like I mean, I don't know if you navigated that before of people kind of being like, oh, like why don't you miss like being able to go to St. Peter's every day? Like, why would you say that you miss the Kiwi more than the church, or something like that?
Well, I like how you put it that we were living there, right? And
Yeah.
and when I think of our Catholic faith, there's a temptation to think of all these things as being something that happened so far away,
Hmm.
and the figures become more symbolic than they were real. I think one of the most striking moments for me being in Rome was going to the oratory of Saint Philip Neri, the first oratory that
Mm-hmm.
he founded in the Church of Saint Jerome,
Mm-hmm.
Church of Saint Jerome. It's a small church, and I was in his like little study, little bedroom, whatever, and there was a sign that said Ignatius came to the Saint Ignatius of Loyola, one of my favorites,
Yeah.
came to the city of Rome, saw a star, and followed the star, and ended up in Saint Philip Neri's room, his house.
What? Whoa.
And we forget the saints were real, and that's what they came to the city for, to talk with other saints who were living.
Mm. That's a
And
great point. Yeah.
that's what we're there for. That's what
Mm-hmm.
church is for, to remember that we belong to this communion that is living, that is here, that is present. And
Right.
it's not just about the physical location or the physical building. Um, and in a very humbling way, we can think about the persecuted Christians in the Middle East right now who may not have the building, but the faith is there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
Right.
that's what matters. That's what Christ came to gather his people.
Right. And it's like I think what you're highlighting there is like it doesn't go like too far either, where it's just like it's all about like the people, the people, the people, and why not just gather inside of like this really cool like lounge or something like that?
Mhm.
Why would you go inside of a church where the pews are laid out? And it's just like the pews aren't all facing each other, to kind of encourage that all of the time. It's like I really like all of like the analogies between like the church as like a ship, with like the
Mhm.
nave, and it's just like we're all kind of looking forward towards
Yeah.
Jesus. So it's like there's that communal aspect, and it's like
Yep.
people be like, okay, Josh, whatever, like that's a cute little symbol, but it's like no, it's like serious. I mean, it's like it's one thing to kind of visit churches, and kind of meander around, but like at the seminary when we're praying like twice a day together, we're all in that chapel, like facing forward, and there's I don't know, there's such a sense of community, and like the truest sense of community is like when the commonality between it all is like Jesus as head, versus
Absolutely.
when it's always like I can get caught up in that of just being like, oh well, like other people is where the beauty is, and so like we need to come together, like absolutely, but it's always in Jesus. I don't know if I've talked to you that much about this, but like I'm really convicted these days that like if I had to kind of boil everything down to like one word, it would be relationship, and we find our peak relationship in Jesus. And in a lot of ways I characterize my time in the seminary almost as like a crash course in like, you know, learning how to relate well, or like how to relationship well. Because it's not just like relatability, like, oh, I do this and you do this too. But it's like relationship ability. And then that, I shouldn't even say trickles down, but it's imbued in how we interact with others. And so, yes, like Rome was, in some sense, initially it was kind of pulling you out of a lot of the relationships, but
Mhm.
then you get all of these stragglers that are pulled apart from the relationships, and you put them in the same place, and there can be a lot of friction. I mean, my first year of seminary was hard. I really didn't
Mhm.
find a lot of people, but then once I kind of came into stride, it's just like gosh, I can think about how many times I spent, in periods of my life where I spent 2 years with someone and I didn't get
Sure.
to know them, for grade school. I went to the same school from like ages 2 to 14. So that's like 12 years, and I still don't know most of those people that well at all. But it's just like in those 2 years, because of like such extreme and kind of different circumstances, it's like lifelong without question. It's just there's going to be no way to ever explain fully what that means to kind of do that Rome or that knack
Mhm.
experience together.
Yeah, and part of it, I think, is you use that image of looking together towards Christ in the
Hmm.
chapel that we did twice, at least twice a day. And I think that's what's powerful about the relationships we formed there, as opposed to relationships in high school or
Hmm.
grade school even, because we were looking towards the same person. And
Hmm.
to see your brother seminarian was almost like, oh, you love Jesus too. And if you're friends with the Lord, and I want to be friends with the Lord, you already had a common friend.
Yeah,
Well, you know,
that's a wholesome way to
the
put
friend
it.
of my friend is my friend.
Oh, come wow. Wow, just a wholesome dude through and through.
Right. And you almost had a guarantee that, okay, we're striving for holiness. Now
Hmm.
it was a school of holiness, if you will. And
Right.
because of that, it was easier to enter into that relationship because your friend, whose name is Jesus, has already vetted this other guy.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, it's like, because they're like living in community, living together, there's so many opportunities of friction, but
Right.
like I think to abstract out from that and being like, well, if this person is genuine in what they are kind of pursuing, then it's just like that's the most important commonality almost to an infinite degree. And all of these frictions, they can be managed as long as you know that that person is, genuine in their pursuit.
Right. Yeah, and friction can also be a healthy thing in some ways, because we were in such an environment, just being away from the normal, I guess your normal support systems, you kind of had to learn how to manage that
Right.
friction within that community, and that I think was also part of learning how to manage relationships.
Hmm.
Parts of disagreements, or deciding whether to eat for lunch can be can be a
Yeah.
complicated thing.
What do you mean? What do you mean eat for lunch? Like people are arguing like whether you want to go to McDonald's on a travel weekend versus going to this restaurant that you did an hour of research on.
Yes, I haven't been there, but I've heard stories.
Oh man. Yeah, I mean, but like a lot of that friction highlights the complexity of the person, and like one
Hmm.
of like the most fundamental tenets I have is this is really profound of like how deep the human person is. And so,
Hmm.
one of my heroes, Dr. Jordan Peterson, a psychologist, is kind of talking about like the phenomenon of consciousness, and like we can't even like begin to make sense of that. And even if you look in like the most robust scientific literature, like we have no idea what it means to kind of have
Yeah.
the spark of the divine or like consciousness in it. Like there's nothing that like really can be made sense of it. It's like if there's a movie playing but no one exists to watch it, then what even is it? And it's like even like our constructs of like time start to fall apart because time is like from the perspective of the observer, whatever. But then he's talking about how like, we have to realize, rightly so, we're so fascinated by all of like the depth of existence out there. And I mean, I think astronomy is a really good example of that because there's just such a depth to understand like how many like hundreds of billions of stars are even just in one galaxy, and then how
Mhm.
many galaxies are out there, and it's just like all this idea. So it's like all of the cosmos out there, but like his point is like we have to realize that there's a lot of cosmos out there, there's a lot of cosmos in here
Huh.
too, and it's like by no means obvious which one is larger unless you use something like relative, like scale or largeness, which is like a pretty like rudimentary way to measure it. But it's like we are complex beyond like
Right.
understanding. And so when you're talking about living in community and those potentials for friction, it just kind of highlights the beauty of like interacting with like a dynamic other. And I always tend towards wanting to be in control, and it's easy to control when it's like oh, okay, like I have this, or even if I were to like take the example that a lot of young people are in, where it's like, oh, well, if I do this, this, and this, then I get set up in the career, and then I can do what I want, and I can like live in this large city, and I can, afford to like go on this ski trip or things like that. And it's nice because it's everything kind of obeys as, you would expect to some degree, but then you look at the human person and it's just like, holy cow, like
Yeah.
you can't even begin to predict so much of human activity. Like it's just a complete mystery in so many ways. But that's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of, the spark of the divine, like I said, that there is complexity, and that almost kind of keeps us on our toes. And as another favorite of mine, I hope he'd be a favorite of yours, or else, I'd be disappointed in you, but Father Jean-Pierre Sonnet, but he's talking about, the Pentateuch and things like that, but the narrative thread that goes through it, where it's just like, we need things like il suspense, as he would say, in his like Belgian French accent, but like we kind of need that dramatic element. And it's just like, gosh, you better believe that humans are complex enough to create, enough of a narrative or enough, drama to kind of engage with life in a very dynamic way.
Right, right. And that complexity is something you figure out in relationship, right?
Yeah.
You don't realize um, both your gifts, but also your limitations if you're not stepping outside and interacting with someone else. That
Hmm.
can show you either the good in you or even the places where you're impoverished. And
Yeah.
it becomes, to enter into relationship is both a humbling experience and a very very blessed experience because you see who you are, uh, especially when another person shows that to you.
Right.
Uh, because sometimes we can be, as you mentioned, liking that control, and we have this controlled self when everything is
Hmm.
okay, and then another person or an interaction might show us our poverty and that becomes an opportunity to invite the Lord to work in those spaces.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's like I think that that can be another kind of way to characterize prayer of just like how willing are we to invite God into every space. I think many people default into tragedy, like that's, it's the classic movie example of, when a character goes through tragedy, you're seeking God because you're so lost. Or when you're really in need, if you're like, oh gosh, I really need this, I would say like the next level of depth is like when you're happy, like bringing God to that joy, and kind of sharing in that with Him. But like kind of what I've played around with of my like the last I would say 3 years is like inviting God into like the wounds, and
Yeah,
that kind
yeah,
of means that like things are going to get stirred up, and it's not that God is dragging you through the mud, but it's just like again what I was talking about with the music, like God is present everywhere,
absolutely.
and like I can invite him into these places that I think I have control over, and then he's just going to show me how much he really is in control.
Mhm.
Um, and I think like I don't know, I shouldn't say this, but like I was going to say that it's like I understand fully that God's in control, but I think that's a bit of a lie. I don't think I fully understand that, but like I'm growing in understanding that God's in control, and like knowing that that is like the most calming, peaceful reality instead of fighting for control. Like I kind of I find myself at times being like okay God, like I know you're in control, but just a reminder, like I like this and
Yeah,
this, and like this is an important thing for me. So like when you're doing your big control thing, like just keep in mind that this is what I want. But like that's not a genuine interaction with the way that God is in control, because what ties into that is the omniscience too, and it's still kind of mind blowing to me to think that God knows me better than myself. I think I throughout the seminary system, but then beyond, like I think I've done a lot of due diligence to like know myself, and I'm constantly striving for that. But it's just like the degree that God knows me more and knows like what will truly satisfy. It's this I shouldn't say unbelievable, because that's just kind of like a filler positive adjective, but it's not that it is not believable. It is believable, and I want to believe in it. It's an amazing reality rather than unbelievable. It's believable and it's amazing, of just how much God knows, me to my depths.
right, right. And as you mentioned, it is something. The fact that God is in control is both consoling, but I think it's also challenging at the same time
Yeah,
because I want to be in control this way, or God, can you control it like this, like how I would want it?
right, right. And I'm finding like for me, and I know that, your time in the Philippines and kind of navigating your way to seminary and then even things in Rome, like maybe this theme, you can relate with, but for me, like a lot of that ties back to the theme of like self-preservation,
Hmm.
of like kind of feeling like I need to fend for myself. And so I know that in the past, like when I get opportunity to take control, that's also like a way to kind of protect myself from like potential chaos or risk. And like, it's not as easy to say like, oh, I should stop like worrying about self-preservation because it's like that's a very like primal instinct. But I at least think that like kind of calling a spade and recognizing that a lot of these times that I seek to have control, is like it's a way to minimize risk, which is we're kind of hardwired to not, take risks because like, we want to stay alive. But I think for me, it really has boiled down to self-preservation and kind of a fear of being, like abandoned or kind of,
Sure.
left behind or something like that.
Yeah, and I do think that it's something that we all struggle with. That
Hmm.
sense of I want to take care of myself and preserve myself. And this is where trusting the Lord's providence becomes a challenge. It's both an invitation and a challenge to believe the unbelievable, if you will, that the Lord
Yeah.
is doing something for me, even in this moment, even when I'm out of control, even when I don't like how things are going. Um, it's just an invitation to that abandonment. That's difficult.
Yeah.
It's difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, I have good faith that, you on your path and, myself on our path, like we're at least trying, and I think
Yeah,
that that's like an important thing. But it's good to kind of, I don't know, accompany each other that, in our different ways and in different states of the United States and different emotional states too at times, but
yes,
just to kind of know that,
absolutely.
we're more similar in that than, you might think otherwise. So kind of like to tie things back to Rome a little bit, like what are your thoughts about like going back to Rome in terms of visiting? Is that like the first opportunity you get,
Sure.
like you're back there? Because remind me, when was you were there in January, right? Or December
No,
of
no, no. My last I last left there in June of last year, 2023. Oh wow, 2023 is not last year. It's 2 years ago.
no, but yeah, but didn't you go like with like Father Cush and like the New York guys?
Oh, we'll be going in March.
Oh, that hasn't happened. I don't know why I blanked on that. Wow.
Correct.
Okay, so then this question is pretty
Yes.
pertinent. You get the chance before me, but like, I mean, are you going to like cry tears of joy? Are you going to be like disgusted at the bus system? Like, are you going to go to like your normal like, digs? Are you going to kind of
Sure.
do stuff that, you didn't get the chance to or you didn't do before? I mean, what's your mindset with that?
Sure. It's a great question, but I think coming into that, it'll be my first time going there as a deacon,
Yeah.
so that I guess it's a plus that I'll be able to help out at liturgy in a way that I hadn't before, and
Hmm.
that's something that I'm looking forward to. But it also helps me, having lived there, I also have some sense of what I want to see and have a better sense of where want to go back to. Like, I want to go back to the Jesu, the Church of the Jesu, the Mother Church of the Jesuits, because that's a beautiful place that I know I've had good times of prayer in. Not expecting they'll be the same, but just thanking the Lord for what He has already done
Hmm.
is how I'm looking at it. To be in the same place and to be grateful for what has already been. Looking, trusting that the Lord will continue to pour out something different, something new.
Yeah, I love that. It's really rooted in gratitude because again, like, we talk about the relationships there and it's like, some of the people, namely me, but I mean, there's other people that, you knew that are no longer, kicking it down the Janiculum or something like that. But
Yeah,
you go there and you're grateful for what that place has done for you. What like when I
Right.
was thinking about it, like when I first left, I was like, man, like there's so many other places I would go before Rome. Like I spent so much time in Rome. Like why would I go back? Like,
Right.
I kind of did Rome, but like kind of as time went on, I was like, man, like if I were ever to go to Europe, I think my first spot would be Rome, and I would kind of get off of the plane and just be so excited, not in the novelty to be like, oh, like I wonder if this is new or like,
Yeah.
like, oh man, this is so exciting, but it's more just like excited to almost like step in the places that I stepped in such
Yeah.
like a formative time. And like, I'm not interested in like, if I was like with, like family or something like that to be like, oh, like, don't worry. Like, I know the best like gelato place or like, I know like how to like get a discount for like the Coliseum tickets. Like, no, I'd be excited to take you to like the park that I went to, where they had like the ostrich and like the
Yes.
alpacas. I'd be excited to tell you like, hey, like when I was standing here at this point in the forum, like I saw like a seagull like completely like destroy someone and then like take their sandwich or something like that. It's just like all of those like little moments that actually were like the specialness of Rome, and it kind of like contrasted the grandness of obviously the architecture and like the significance of the city. And it's not that I like, I look down on that. It's like, oh, that's like, peasant like tourist stuff. But it's just like, again, like living there, there was so much like tangibility with like the real experience of like being a Roman. So I just like, I'm not like rushing to get there. I know that it'll come in due time, but I'm really excited for that to kind of relive those steps because like it was so important. I remember after we went to the zoological museum,
Yeah.
we went to that bubble tea place and have those punch cards. I have to go back there and try to get our
Right.
10 punches. I think we're only up to two of them. There's still have eight to go until we get a free bubble tea.
Just to get a free bubble tea.
Yeah, I know.
And
I know.
I like
Save
how
the
you
save the coupons. Why would you throw away a coupon?
cut the coupons. I like how you mentioned it's the little moments, really. I mean,
Yeah.
it can be a very overwhelming city just because of so much history, so much art, and so much architecture.
Yeah, I mean, but spoken as someone who's also in New York, by the way, it's not
Well,
exactly a
exactly.
small place either.
But sometimes it's the little moments that you remember the most. Like, I mean, I'm thinking right now, I'm walking somewhere in Rome, right?
Hmm.
And I have this memory of a mom just very sweetly calling her child amore,
Oh,
amore. And the way she intoned it was just so full of love and so pure. Like, that's what I remember.
yeah.
The small thing, and sometimes it's really not the big things that you remember. Sure, I remember seeing the Colosseum and everything, but what stirs us can just be those little moments that we can be grateful for.
Yeah, man, that's beautiful. I love that. I love that. Like sometimes, because like I've maybe not in like the past few months, but I definitely have gone through phases of like being nostalgic, and I think in each of our own ways, our time in Rome was a little bit shorter than we were expecting. So I kind of like look back and being like, oh man, like I never paid the €4 to actually like go up the elevator in Piazza Venezia or things like that for the what do they call that building? The Capitol building. What is it called?
Um, Piazza Venezia? Was that the the Altare della
Arca.
Pace? The
It's
wedding
something.
wedding cake.
Well, the wedding cake. Yeah, I was thinking about because isn't there like an official term that's like, I know that I don't know. I'm Capitolio or something like that.
Oh, the Campidoglio.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. But like it's I look at that and it's just like I look at sometimes there's like videos that pop up of people like exploring Rome and it's like oh man but like I think too, like sometimes I close my eyes and I can still like completely map out like my bike ride to the Greg
Right.
every single day because I knew every single turn. I knew like the optimal like traffic light, timings and like oh you really have to like jump the curb here and try to not get run over and things like that. So it's like I'm I feel very blessed to have so many mundane experiences of a place that is a lot of people's dreams. Like that's no like dirt on someone who like that is in their dreams. It's just saying like it's a blessing for me to interact with the city that intimately that like
Right.
usually is only interacted with for like once in a lifetime things. And I before I mean that was my first trip to Europe. I've only been to Europe twice now, and the second time was only for 5 days when I was kind of packing up shop. And it's like that's it's a once in a lifetime experience for people. And I mean, this when you're in Rome, it's pretty easy to complain about the fact that you're not, home and things like that.
Sure.
But like, yeah, it's such a blessing, to be able to again close my eyes and imagine my bike ride to Rome. So, kind of on that theme that you said about it, just gratitude for the whole experience. And I am really glad that you're gonna be able to go there in a couple of months. That's special.
Yeah, I'll try to find a kiwi and place it in somebody's couch.
Yeah, please do. You have to go to the Casa though. It's no longer at the NAC. So a tradition on the podcast is we always close in prayer. So I want to ask you, Deacon Aaron
Yes.
Salvan, is there anything that we can pray for you for?
Uh, yes, and this is something I've been praying about for a while, but just the grace to be present in those little moments when I could have the opportunity to be, witness and to acknowledge God's presence when maybe I would otherwise haven't. Just to
Hmm.
be present and to find God in those little moments, those mundane moments. I think that's something I'm still praying for. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, the beauty of the everyday.
Mm.
All right, sweet. Let's pray in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Amen. Jesus, open our eyes, Lord. Help us to be attentive to you. Help us to not seek out the big, grand, shiny things for the excitement or the hype of momentum. Rather, Lord, help us to be as tranquil as a lake, to be placid in our faith, to look look down into the manger that you were born in, to look at how lowly you chose to exist in this earth. Help us to always look down and observe all of the beauty underneath our feet and just around us so that that can all point up towards you. Help us to always stay close, stay grounded, and to stay humble, realizing that you are truly the one in control. And Lord, please this day be with us, guide our steps, guide our words, guide our thoughts, guide all that we do, so that we may always move closer to you and grow further in communion through your example. We ask this all in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
In the name of the Father and of the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen. I was
Thank
thinking at the beginning of like, when I was doing homily practicums with Father Romano, and he's always like, it's not in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, in the name of the Father and of
of
the
this
Son.
time.
Like you can't start a homily with that. But Father Romano, beloved character. So thank
Well,
you, Aaron. You're a good man.
thank you for the gift that you are and that your ministry is.